हम लोग जो है 20-25 दिन से ऐसे ही रह रहे हैं, किसी तरह खा रहे हैं, किसी दिन भूखे रह रहे हैं। और ये देखिए हम लोग का बर्तन खाली पड़ा हुआ है।
ये शहर छोड़ के लाखों आदमी जा रहा है। अगर हम लोग को भी मदद नहीं दिए तो हम लोग भी शहर छोड़ के चले जाएंगे।
मरेंगे तो वही जाकर जहां पर जिंदगी।
शहर से जाने वाले तुम ही लोग हो?
हाँ। तुम लोग कितना बड़ा रिस्क ले रहे हो भाई।
अब मरना है तो रास्ते में मरना है। यदि बच गए तो घर जाएंगे, नहीं तो मर जाएंगे तो रास्ते में रह जाएंगे।
कितना किलोमीटर चल चुके हो पता है?
हम सब हो गया है 200 से ऊपर।
छोटे छोटे गली वाले ये सब का रास्ता क्यों ले रहे हो?
बीमार थी ना।
कुछ खाने पीने का इंतजाम हो जाएगा क्या?
आप लोग परदेसी हेडिंग आपकी है, रसोई चले जाओ, धर्मशाला सो जाना।
अरे 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 रुको रुको,
लगता है बेहोश हो गया।
मरेंगे तो वही जाकर जहां पर जिंदगी।
तुमको आज सही समय पर सही जगह पर ट्रक मिलते गए। हाँ,
भूखे मर रहे हैं, रो रहे हैं बेचारे पर। चलो यार बैठे कर, पुलिस कहेगा तो भाई समझा दिया जाएगा।
यहाँ तो जिस्म जाकर
कभी कभी गलती करना भी ठीक ही होता है।
Hello everyone, this is our project on migrant labours, a social problem in India. In this presentation, we will provide introduction on what is meant by the term migration, what are the reasons behind migration, classification of these reasons, and contemporary theories on migration. Apart from this, we will also look at the three sociological perspectives of migration, which are the functionalist perspective, conflicting perspective, and symbolic interactionism. We will also be focusing our discussion on the significance of social location, age, and gender, and then taking on the institutional measures in India taken for migrant labourers. Towards the end, we will be doing a case study on pre-COVID and post-COVID scenario and how things change for migrant labourers in India. Let us begin with the topic, what is meant by the term migration. Migration refers to the movement from one state to another or within their own country of residence, depending on the goal and reason. For purely question, persons who migrate can be divided into three categories: migrants, refugees, and asylum seekers. We are more interested in the first category, which are migrants. Migrants are traditionally described as the persons who change the country of their residence for general reasons and purposes. These purposes may include the search for better job opportunities or healthcare needs or any personal reason. Migration can be broadly classified into two categories. The first one is voluntary migration. Voluntary migration is based on the initiative that a free will person takes and is influenced by many factors such as economic, political, and social. These can be either push factors or pull factors. Talking about pull factors are positive aspect of a different social location that encourages a person to move to that place. However, push factors are apparently diametrically opposite and both are the sides of the same coin, being equally responsible. Any kind of harmful factor can be considered as a push factor, such as poor quality of life, lack of job, etc. Let us talk about the other category, forced migration. There has often been a debate on categorizing it under the push factor of voluntary migration, but often sociologists tend to give a separate definition for forced migration. Forced migration refers to the movement of a refugee and internally displaced people, as well as people displaced by natural or environmental disasters, chemical, nuclear, or biological disaster, or development projects. Forced migrants often end up living a miserable life. They have to seek life in asylums, camps, or spontaneous settlements, a very well example of which is the COVID-19 pandemic, which will be dealt later in our discussion. The problem of migrant labourers has been studied in detail in literature, and a good theoretical framework has been developed for it. Broadly, the various theories of migration can be subsumed into the following three categories. Economic reasons for migration. There are several theories associated with economic reasons for migration, These are neoclassical theory, neoliberal theory, dual labor market theory, new economics of labor migration. Apart from the economic reason, another reason identified for migration is social cause, and the theory which support is world system theory. To take into account various aspects of migrations, a unifying theory is proposed which is called as osmosis. While old migration theories are generally embedded in geography, sociology, or economics, osmosis explains migration in specific period and space. It explains the whole phenomena of human migration. The simple migration is divided into diffusion, stabilization, and concentration P. While there is much to say about each and every theory, but due to insufficient time, our discussion will be mainly based on neoliberal theory and neoclassical theory. Now, let us look at the three sociological perspectives on labor migration. First, functionalist perspective. Functionalists view society as a structure with several units, and these units perform their function to maintain the state of equilibrium. Migrant laborers play a prominent role in maintaining as well as disrupting this balance. While migrant laborers constitute a major portion of the working force, their contribution to any one of the unit is immense. These laborers ensure that the work which are essential for any unit to sustain are performed and thus contribute towards the economy as well. However, these laborers are also cause of social disturbance. They create imbalance as they tend to increase the competition for jobs. People who were earlier working with the decent pay now have to opt for lower wages, dwindling them to miserable conditions. The second theory associated with sociology is social conflict theory. Social conflict perspective focuses on the competition between groups within the society for limited resources. As migrant laborers increase the number of candidates for the same job, they tend to increase the conflict among various groups. Some of the groups are willing to do the same job for lesser pay as they migrated all the way in search of jobs, resulting in conflict with the local as earlier they have a better pay. This disrupts the socio-economic stability. Then the symbolic interactionism: migrant laborers carry with them their culture and social symbols. These social symbols mingle with the symbols of the place where they migrate, thus creating a cultural hotspot. Example of such thing could be seen in Delhi and northwestern part of the Uttar Pradesh like Noida and Ghaziabad. Migrant laborers from Bihar and eastern UP exercised their festival of Chhath Puja, which was not a festival in Delhi and western Uttar Pradesh, but today one could easily see evidences of it in Delhi and western UP. This is just a simple example how migrant laborers are the cause of changes and enrichment of social symbols.
Hello everyone, I am Japneet. I will start by asking the question that is the problem of migrant labor a system problem or an individual problem? Well, one can argue that it is an individual problem because the decision to migrate or not to migrate is the decision of a particular individual. Every individual wants to improve one's standard of living and to have a stable source of income. So, if an individual cannot find a job in his or her location, then that person can relocate to some other place in search of employment or social well being. Since an individual generally prefers a more developed region, migration is thus associated with urbanization and modernization, as we will see that the problem of migrant labor from an individualistic perspective is well explained by the neoclassical economic theory of migration, which basically states that labor migration is due to wage difference between two geographical locations. One could also argue that the problem of migrant labor is a system problem because investments are attracted mainly in the developed and industrialized region, because of which developed regions enjoy more benefits. This induces a shift of workers towards industrialized areas. Additionally, neoliberal measures taken by the government weakens the system of economic and social justice. Neoliberal measures seek economic growth by promoting consumerism and competition. These measures limit the intervention of the government. We will also see that the problem of migrant labor from a system perspective is well explained by the neoliberal theory. The term neoliberalism was popularized by a classical liberal economist, Milton Friedman. So now let's see what is the significance of social problem in the problem of migrant laborers. There are two aspects to the migrant workers problem. First is the effect of social location. Why specifically we ask why is this problem is higher in some states and lower in other states, and how this problem varies among men and women, and how it differs across rural and urban areas. The second aspect of this problem is the social and the economic injustice faced by the migrants. Now, let's see the state-wise distribution and how it affects the problem of migrant labor. As per the 2011 census, migrants constitute 37.68% of India's population, which is approximately 455.8 million, which is quite significant portion of India's population. Based on the type of migration, the migrants can be divided into two categories: interstate migrants and intrastate migrants. The data of intrastate migration is not considered very reliable because this migration is very seasonal and differs greatly even within the state. As per the 2011 census, interstate migrants are 54.3 million and intrastate migrants are 395.6 million, which form the majority. As you can also see in the heat map that Maharashtra, Delhi, Gujarat, West Bengal, Tamil Nadu attracts the highest quota of migrants in India, whereas Uttar Pradesh and Bihar supply the highest number of interstate migrants. The analysis of 2011 census show that the migration in India is mainly driven by factors like employment, marriage, education, movement within the family, natural calamities, and other factors. But marriage and employment are the two primary reasons for migration, with marriage being the most sizably and popular reason. Push factors, namely employment, marriage, education, are strong, while the effect of pull forces like better living condition and prosperity are weak. This is in clear contrast with the developed countries. The data which we see here is mainly consistent with the neoclassical economic theory of migration. Now let's see the significance of age and gender. As per the 2011 census, 85% of the migrants fall in the age group of 18 to 30 years. Migration mainly because of employment, marriage, and education. Across men and women, the reason for migration is very different. For men, work and employment is the main reason of migration. 12.3 million out of 38.8 million men say that the reason of migration is work and employment, while in women, 42.4 million out of 65.4 million say that marriage is the main cause of migration. This has been verified by many studies. So you can see this in the graph that uh, men mainly migrate because of work and women mainly migrate because of marriage. Interestingly, this way data for women varies across states. In northern India, most women migrate because of marriage, while this percentage is significantly lower in the southern parts of India. Now let's see the significance of rural and urban areas. Uh, Now, in this context, we will mainly focus on the interstate migration because, as explained earlier, because of the lack of availability of reliable data and the seasonal trends, we will mainly consider interstate migration. The migration can be divided into four categories: rural to rural, rural to urban, urban to rural, and urban to urban. rural to urban being the highest and urban to rural being the lowest. So, as per the analysis of 2011 census, lack of employment opportunities in rural areas and better employment prospects and infrastructure facilities in urban areas motivate people to migrate to urban areas. This brings development and growth opportunities for cities, but increases the problem of formation of slums. Some slum dwellers who are mainly migrants stay in pathetic condition with inadequate water and bad drainage. So this graph shows uh, from where most of the migrants originate and where is their destination. Delhi and Maharashtra are the most popular destination, and the migration is higher in states with higher GDP. So this is again the same graph where which explains how the migration differs by region. Now let's see the socio-economic effects of migration. Most of the workers who migrate belong to the marginalized communities like Dalits, tribals, and minorities. Many studies have found that the poor condition of migrant labor is not only because of the neoliberal policies of the government, but also because of the historical social oppression and exploitation by the upper caste people. The neoliberal nature of social welfare policies since 1991 deprives the marginalized people of their economic and social capital. These neoliberal economic reform has made the problem of migrant laborers more severe. Inadequate employment generation, vast growth of informal economy further add to the plight of migrant laborers.
Hi, my name is Anjali. In this slide, we will take a look at some institutional measures taken to address the problems faced by migrant workers. The Indian Constitution contains basic provisions relating to the conditions of employment, non-discrimination, right to work, etc. Migrant workers face additional problems and constraints as they are both laborers and migrants. Many of the problems faced by migrant laborers are covered by laws and policies as much as they cover all laborers in a particular sector of industry. Here we have mentioned a few legal protections. Articles 23, 42 and 43 are concerned with protection of fundamental human rights and are aimed towards protecting the poor. The Equal Remuneration Act 1976 enforces equal payment to all workers regardless of their gender. Interstate Migrant Workmen Act 1979 specifically deals with malpractices associated with the recruitment and employment of workers who migrate across state boundaries. In the unprecedented scenario of COVID-19, the Ministry of Labour and Employment took the initiative to collect the data of migrant workers who are going to their home states during lockdown. On the basis of information collected from various state governments, around 1 crore migrant workers have gone back to their source state during COVID-19. In order to resolve the grievances of migrant workers during lockdown, the ministry had set up 20 control rooms all over the country. During lockdown, more than 15,000 complaints of the workers were resolved through these control rooms. After the lockdown, PM Garib Kalyan Yojana with a financial package of 1.7 lakh crore was launched to help poor, needy and unorganized sector workers of the country. Under this package, 80 crore people have been provided 5 kg wheat or rice and 1 kg pulses. Government of India has launched PM Swanidhi scheme to facilitate collateral-free working, capital loan up to 10,000 of 1 year tenure to approximately 50 lakh street vendors, many of whom were actually migrant workers, to resume their businesses. Also, per day wages under MG Nareka have been enhanced from 182 to 202. Under PM Garib Kalyan Rozgar Abhiyan, rural infrastructure will build involvement of these migrant workers and about 15,000 crores were spent for this purpose. In a similar manner, many projects involving migrant workers have been initiated for building of roads, highways by the Transport Ministry in order to facilitate employment of migrant workers. 20 lakh crore financial package under Atmanirbhar Bharat has been launched specifically to create employment opportunities for migrant workers. Thank you.
Hello everyone, I am Shubham Soni and now I will start with pre-COVID and post-COVID analysis of migrant laborers. Including pre-pandemic days, many migrant laborers faces improper working conditions. They are even exploited and are even paid less by the employer. Often they do not have any job security at all. Their jobs are on the mercy of the employer. Besides that, they do not have any other benefits and often denied proper medical facilities. Most of the time, they do not have complete information of their rights and hence they are easily cheated by the employers. Now coming to the mental health part, in a survey conducted by NSS, 37% of the migrant laborers were found suffering due to mental health problems. From this, we can tell that this problem is very higher in migrant laborers. One reason for this is that they carry burden of their hometown problems as well as their place of work. Now talking about the gender perspective, many women laborers are less paid than men laborers and they do not have any right to say in fixing their salaries. The crimes and exploitation of women laborers are far more significant than the male counterpart and they often do not have any adequate facilities.
So now let's see how COVID-19 affects migrant laborers. During the pandemic, many migrant laborers have been stranded in the cities and other locations of the world without wages, money and food. Due to starvation, they were forced to walk hundreds of kilometers to reach their villages. After reaching their villages, many migrant laborers have been forced to put in the quarantine centers by the police. Their men, due to lack of medical facilities and poor sanitation, their mental health deteriorates. Now talking about the gender perspective, women migrant laborers are suffered more than the men because they are less in number. Their sufferings are neglected. They carry small children with them, which contributed more in the difficulties. Nearly 4 out of 10 women lost their jobs within 2 months. The prevalence of undernourishment among women is higher than men's, which can be high as 31.6% in Jharkhand and low as 6.4% in Sikkim.